Welcome back to Far From Perfect, everyone. Per usual, Allie and I have already been having a great conversation. I should have just hit record at the very beginning, but welcome back, Allie.
Thanks for having me.
So good to see you again. So, you guys, Allie and I, we're constantly chatting back and forth. We've got our boots on the ground, so we can be the only people that you need to follow on social media because we're going to talk about that too. But we're just seeing so many things. And Allie is a woman's hormone health expert. You know that I am a nutrition coach, and I wanted Allie to come on and talk about perimenopause. We talk about perimenopause a lot because I'm surrounded by perimenopausal women. What about you? What are your clients
Oh
like?
yeah. 90% probably.
Yeah, I would say
Oh, yeah.
90%. And like when I see someone fill out an intake form or they get like a one-time macro calculation for me, they're pretty much 42, 44, 45 years old. Maybe I get a 50-year-old, but it is really prime perimenopause time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I treat a few, like sometimes teenage girls come to me, and then I do definitely treat post-menopause as well. But yeah, I mean a lot of perimenopause. And I myself am in the age. I'm doing it too, so I
Right?
got
We're right there in it. So I
yeah.
wanted to talk about perimenopause just a little bit more, but not not in the way you're normally hearing about perimenopause. You hear fluctuating hormones. You hear about all of the other symptoms of perimenopause, shortened cycle, irregular cycle. But let's talk about why. Why is this happening? It's
Mhm.
not your hormones aren't necessarily running the show. Your brain is running the show. And I wanted Allie to have this conversation about how the brain and our hormones and our bodies all
Mhm.
work together. So Allie, we don't need to do an intro because everyone knows you. I'll make sure they know where to get a hold of you. Let's start with how can we start this conversation with perimenopause, the brain and hormones?
So I like love talking about the brain, and I have done so much research and education on the brain over the last probably decade because it is the control center of everything, right? So every single thing that happens in our bodies starts in our brain. And so when you think about perimenopause, to Kylie's point, you think about fluctuating estrogen and progesterone and what do we do about this and that and HRT and herbs and whatever, which all are part of the conversation too, for sure. But what's happening is your brain sent, so hormones are little chemical messengers, right? So you have a part of your brain called the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, several other structures in there. But those two are important for the communication to your ovaries. And so we call it the HPO axis, hypothalamus pituitary ovarian axis. And your brain throughout your menstrual cycle is sending certain chemicals or hormones down to basically knock on your ovaries and get some response. In perimenopause, that really the definition is our ovaries getting less responsive, right? So certain things like follicle stimulating hormone, for example, has to be produced at higher levels. So when you look at FSH on lab work, in perimenopause, it's probably elevated past fertility because we're kind of knocking hard on those ovaries to try to get a response of estrogen out of them. As you continue to go through perimenopause, there's sort of three phases of it. The first phase is a little bit more mild. You might notice some mild cycle changes, things like that. Probably you're still fertile, right? Still really in your prime fertility. Second stage would be where some months your ovaries are responsive, some months they're not so responsive, which kind of leads us to like the 13-day cycle or 40-day cycle. I just had a patient right before you, and that was her last 2 months of patterns. And then you start to get into that last stage of perimenopause where your ovaries are at the end of their follicles to be ovulated. They're sort of nearing the end of their life cycle, and you're having to bang on them. Your brain, right, is sending that follicle stimulating hormone to knock on them fairly hard to get some response out of them. And estrogen also is low, right? Because it's like, man, we're kind of done doing this. We're not going to really produce many hormones from here. So yes, everything starts in the brain.
So that's so interesting. I had never thought of it like this at all. I'd never really thought about the signal to my ovaries and my ovaries needing more and more of a signal that knock on the door. Okay. Wow,
Mhm.
Allie. So what about the adrenal glands? How does that play into this? or does
So
it?
you also have an HPA axis, so hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And when your brain, so I've said this many times on this podcast, but cortisol is part of your circadian rhythm. Everybody on the internet's talking about cortisol in some capacity, and we're really oversimplifying it as such thing as cortisol is bad for you, it causes belly fat or something like that. And cortisol is life-saving. It's amazing for us. We feel really terrible without it, either high or low, actually. And so it's also part of our sleep-wake cycle. So obviously at night when you want to be sleeping restfully and deep, we need a break from it. When we are at 8 a.m. in the morning or within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up, we want a big surge of it to kind of wear off some of that grogginess and fatigue, kind of burn that off and get you up and ready for the day. And so, just as a side note, it was interesting to me, people obsession with energy levels and things like that. Like, because of this sleep wake cycle, our energy levels are going to shift in the day. You're not going to feel the same at 3 p.m. that you do at 8 a.m. And so we have like a weird obsession with, being productive and getting as much done as we possibly can throughout the day. So that's part of it. So this HPA axis, it's part of their sleep wake cycle, your circadian rhythm, but also our brain is always scanning your environment for dangers, scary things, fear, overstimulation, overwhelm, and making sure that you can cope with what you're faced with. And if it feels like you can't, or that you might need a little extra help, it's going to just douse you a little bit, depending on the situation of the perception of it, with a little bit of extra cortisol and adrenaline.
Mhm.
And that can be from a notification coming in, that can be from looking at the news, that could be from looking at social media and just getting way too much content thrown your way. It could be from almost getting in a car accident. It could be from being late. It
Mm.
can be from literally anything. And so eat all day, every day, we're getting just this little burst of cortisol and adrenaline, and that is coming from your adrenals. So when your brain is constantly in this state of like high alert, hypervigilance, on, go, productive, criticism thoughts, pressure thoughts, fear thoughts, all of these things, it starts to really need to communicate more with the adrenals than the ovaries. Right.
Oh.
And so a lot of different like chemical things happen, but when your brain produces more cortisol, for example, think about like the fight or flight response, or when you're under stress, like it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of glucose, it takes a lot of minerals like your magnesium, your B vitamins, it takes a lot of resources to do that. And so like your sex hormones, you don't really need to do that. Like progesterone is like this really nice, soothing, calming hormone. It's produced from ovulation, helps us to hold a baby if we were to get pregnant. Your cortisol, if it's in excess, will start to steal from progesterone, which makes perimenopause way worse, because that's really what's happening is progesterone's low in perimenopause to begin with. And so that's why stress causes worsening of perimenopause symptoms, period symptoms. I mean, literally every symptom, but that's kind of what's happening.
Okay, you guys, I want to make sure you are all digesting this. Okay, we are already losing our progesterone in perimenopause.
Yeah.
Then you throw all these stressors, all of them that Allie listed, all of them that we talk about on every single podcast, which is raising cortisol and stealing even more progesterone. I mean, no wonder. It's like no wonder. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't understand this before. Maybe I wasn't in the right spot to hear it, but I can think of my life too, like when things were not okay, and this is exactly what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I certainly like when I was age 25, I was under a lot of pressure and stress and trying to figure things out. Ironically, I was actually in acupuncture school too. Um, and there's a whole lot to that too. But yeah, I mean, I lost my period. So, when stress hormones go up, sex hormones are going to go down. A lot of people have low testosterone, low DHEA numbers. That is all things that we see physiologically from stress. And so, I say this a lot, but you really want to have a practitioner who looks at the whole picture with you.
Yeah.
Because if you just start to treat your hormone symptoms and your low DHEA or your low testosterone, sure, add some testosterone cream to it,
Yeah.
probably make you feel a bit better. But let's figure out why it's like that. Age appropriate, as we age, testosterone gets lower for sure. But I don't know. I say this a lot to people. Like, there is such a varying degree to perimenopausal symptoms that, like, low estrogen, for example, does not 100% correlate to hot flashes or 100% correlate to frozen shoulder. And so if it did, everyone with low estrogen, every person that went through menopause would have these symptoms, and we don't. Some
Yeah.
people skate through it and don't get any symptoms or very mild ones, and some people are absolutely debilitated and miserable. And so, in my opinion, there's also something else to look for. There's something else to look at.
Oh my gosh. And this, I mean, there's so many things to follow up with on this. So every coach, I think also practitioner like yourself will create social media content saying you went to your doctor, they did your labs and they say everything looks normal. Okay. So I don't have that experience because I never go to the doctor. If I need help, I'm gonna go to Allie. Like, why? But um the point is, even if something is out of whack, you don't just, like you said, throw the estrogen cream or the testosterone whatever on it. You got to get to the root cause. So back to one of our previous episodes, yeah, do HRT if that's what's right for you, but you still have to address all of these factors because you can't just take HRT and think that your life is going to be hunky dory. I actually had a guest in my monthly community, Dr. Jordan, who's been on the podcast, and we're going to do another one. But like, we can get you feeling sexual, like your libido back up. But the real reason you don't want to have sex with your partner isn't really your hormones, it's all this other stuff that's building up. Let's get to the root cause.
Mhm.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
frozen shoulder, this is so crazy. This keeps coming up in my life, not with me personally, but I keep hearing about this. Why is frozen shoulder a symptom of perimenopause? Do you know?
Well, so interestingly, a lot of people think it's a perimenopausal or menopausal symptom due to low estrogen, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, there's a list a mile long of symptoms associated with that. Again, I think so. To kind of back out of this a little bit, there was a study called the Boulder Back Pain Study, and it was done about, I think it was 2 years ago now. And basically in this study, they had people of varying degrees of back pain that had various degrees of chronicity. So had been there for 10 years, 20 years, 5 years, 1 year, and had varying diagnosis: herniated discs, disc degeneration, weak core muscles, leg length imbalance, stenosis, like all the things that we hear about back pain. And this has actually been out since the 1980s, but they formally did a scientific study on it recently, which was amazing. And they found that all of these people who had come into this study of all of these different reasons and different intensities of pain and all these things, uh, like 90% of them were pain-free by the end of the study. And of the ones who weren't pain-free, they were significantly reduced. There was barely anybody, if not anybody, I can't remember exactly, that didn't have any reduction in pain. And it was all through this idea of neuroplastic pain. So the mind-body pain, and treating it from a mind-body approach with no drugs, no therapies, no modalities. It was just mind-body. And I am passionate about this because I had chronic back pain from the ages of 25 to 30, and I had gone through this process clear back then. And so I say that because sometimes when things don't look perfect on an MRI or imaging or whatever, we can correlate that, right? We're like, oh, this disc is herniated. There probably is back pain here, and that's why we need to fix this herniated disc. But we've found numerous times through several studies that even people with herniated discs, like, some people have them, have no pain, the pain changes. Some people get surgical procedures to have them fixed, so they still have pain. Like, there's all kinds of discrepancies. And so I think the same thing, I'm very cautious, even with like the menopausal symptoms of like dizziness, for example. example, and frozen shoulder, and several of the other ones, that is it actually due to low estrogen? Because like I mentioned, all of us have low estrogen postmenopause, but
Mhm.
not all of us have those symptoms. And so I think that a lot of those symptoms, and have been, again, proven over and over through different modalities, are due to nervous system.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
I treat it all the time, and have had, in people who are willing to do it, about 100% success in treating like dizziness, for example, or frozen shoulder.
Okay, you guys, if you were to listen to every single podcast episode that Allie and I ever do on her podcast or my podcast, one thing always comes up, and it is nervous system regulation.
Mhm.
And we are living in a world that makes it very hard, not impossible, but very hard to be regulated. And as Allie will always say, it's not the stress, right? It's our perception of the stress, it's our ability or inability to deal with the stress, but like we have to figure this out.
Yeah, and I told you before this, like, I'm not perfect either. This summer I was feeling so overstimulated,
Yeah.
just to my wits end. And at the end of July, it finally kind of just, like, I reached a point where I was like, I have to change.
Yeah.
Like, this has to change. And I've been on this journey for over 10 years,
Yeah.
literally. And it just, things sneak up, and life stuff happens, and, you know, social media changes, and like it just changes all the time. And so you have to just constantly settle in, and kind of, like, I always tell my patients, like, do an inventory. If you're feeling good, you're sleeping good, your anxiety's good, your mood's good, your digestion, your energy, like you're feeling zest for life, you're not feeling burnt out and bogged down, you're probably doing fine. Like, keep
Yeah.
doing what you're doing. But if
Mhm.
you're feeling like anxious, I mean, that's a danger signal. If you're feeling snappy, that's also a danger signal. If you're feeling fatigued, you're burned out. Your body's producing too much cortisol, too much stress. You're getting tired of doing it. Sleep. Your body can't go to sleep at night. It's a danger signal, and it feels like it needs to be on high alert and awake all night. And sure, like, there's sleep apnea, there's
Yeah.
metabolic stuff, like, there's different things for sure. I'm not willing to say that every single thing is this, but I am willing to think that almost every single thing on the planet can get better with a regulated nervous system, including like
Absolutely.
autoimmunity, and like some of the things that we think are so incurable, or are needing to be treated by medicine. Like, if we don't have our brain on fire, those things also get better.
Well, precisely. Why is it? I mean, you see this more than I do. I just see it like as a bystander, but it is your life. Why does every woman have Hashimoto's? Why does every woman have all the other autoimmune conditions besides like celiacs? There is a reason. It's the way
Yeah,
that we're living our lives.
it's the way that we're living.
Not to
It's
blame anyone, but
No,
it's
no, no.
hard
It's
to say.
stress, it's food, it's lack of sleep, it's constantly being on high alert. It's all of these things. I mean, if autoimmunity is your immune system being on high alert.
Yeah.
So we
What
need
are
to,
the other autoimmune conditions?
there's rheumatoid arthritis, there's Sjogren's, lupus, MS, Graves' disease.
Waves. Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, I bet every woman listening to this, I bet 85% of you are dealing with one of these things because I see it come across on the intake forms all the time, and it didn't used to be like that.
It's estimated, actually, in terms of like primary care visits, that 60% are due to mind-body conditions.
Well, if that's not the wake up call we all need.
Which is, like, honestly such great news.
Right. Yes.
Like, it's amazing. There's things we can do for this. It's not that you're broken. It's you're fine. We just need to learn how to get our brain out of high alert. And trust me, if I can learn this and actually implement it, I promise you anybody else can too.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Allie. And like you said, this is your life's work, right?
Yeah, always doing an inventory on it. So I want to offer some, like, places that I think, especially on September 12th, like, where I think this could be coming from, and just
Okay.
some kind of forward thinking. So politics, I don't want to get into it, but that's a big place of fear.
Yeah.
Um, 24-hour news cycles, social media, and social media for a variety of reasons. Number one, the blue light and just notifications coming at you. Secondly, the amount of content, even if you're looking at like amazing things and like nothing that's triggering, it's just like one after the next when
Mhm.
you're scrolling, and our brains just evolutionarily haven't evolved into that.
Mhm.
I think that inevitably comparison, pressure, we're not doing enough, we don't have enough, we're not far enough along, our bodies aren't good enough, all of that comes into play.
Mhm.
And I tell my patients regularly to change your algorithm.
Yes.
Like if you, and you talk about this too, but specifically around, I mean, truly anything, but around weight loss, like if you're struggling with weight loss, like looking at content around weight loss and before and after photos and a million people then telling you how to do this correctly is going to add to the urgency, add to the problem, and it's going to make things actually worse, I think.
Yes.
So I regularly tell my frustrated weight loss patients to change your algorithm with weight loss.
Yeah.
You don't need to keep engaging with it so that every trainer on the internet is on your algorithm feed.
I know. Because then you also are getting confused.
Yes.
Have that
And
happen. I'll have a
overwhelmed.
client send me something from someone else, like, well, maybe should I do this? They're saying this is too much protein. They're saying I shouldn't do squats for this. They're saying, I'm like, you got to find one person. Like I did an Instagram post about this when I first started social media. I followed like 3 people for
Yeah.
one for nutrition, one for training, maybe and two like one that did it all. It was Lane Norton, blonde ponytail, and Sohi, and Marcy Nevin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now everybody and their brother is a coach, and maybe that's because my algorithm,
I know it looks like that for sure. The same thing with like business coaching, right? Like I've gotten stuck in that regard of like
Yes.
everyone having their own strategy and their own theory and whatever.
Mhm.
Any nervous system regulation, like everyone is talking about everything. And if you're like struggling with something, follow one person that and see that process through. Like trust their process for a reasonable amount of time and see if it gets you where you need to be. If not, obviously change directions. But I do think that is a huge reason that people are stuck in weight, body composition, hormones, nervous system, stress, anxiety, like digestion, gut health, all of it. People are stuck because there's just too much information.
Well, right. And it's going to take more than 3 months to see a significant change. And so if they don't see that change right off the bat, then they're going to go to the next person and try
Yeah.
the new thing when you don't know if that other thing you were doing was just about to work, if the pot was just about to boil. And
Mhm.
there we go. Nothing works then.
Right. And then that also isn't benign psychologically because then you think that you're broken. It really activates that high alert fear response that this is never going to change. What's wrong with me? That also is really tough on your brain. I think the amount of notifications coming
Oh,
in through text messages and Teams and email and I don't know, wherever else, social media, like games, like those damn
games.
games.
Get those games off your phone, people.
They love to send notifications. So, just that keeps our brain on high alert all the time of like, oh, someone needs me. It's like we're Pavlov's dogs to notifications. And so I think, just if you think about that, all of those things, that's just like fear, stimulation here, there, like it's a lot for our little brains to handle without staying on this like high alert place.
Oh, it is. So, like a lot of you, I wear an Apple Watch and I don't know what happened. I think it had an update of some sort. And now, like, all my notifications come through, whereas I had all of them turned off. And I've got to figure it out because it drives me batty. Like, I'll be in yoga class, and I want you to know I do not push the button to say I'm starting yoga. You guys don't need to do that for every activity that you do, just FYI. But I'm
Yeah.
in yoga and it'll like, buzz at me. And I'm like, don't think about it. Don't think about it. I've got to figure it out. But it makes my practice, it's not the same.
Right.
Pulls me out.
Yeah.
But that's what people are living with. Okay, back to the games. My husband doesn't listen to my podcast, so I can talk about this. Like, nothing drives me more crazy than seeing my husband playing a stupid game on his phone. Because all I'm thinking is, you just need a dopamine hit. I'm like, what's missing in your life? You know what I'm saying? Why are you playing this game? The lights are so bad for you. Cautionary tale. I don't, there's no reason to play games on your phone. Sorry. You
I
can do
know.
Portal, but that's it.
I mean, honestly, like watch people. So the average American checks their phone 266 times per day. And if you like watch people at like, and I'm guilty of this too,
Oh, yeah.
like if you watch people at like a stoplight, they like whip it out real quick. Like any amount, and this is the problem, we can't sit in stillness. Like that's literally why our brains like feel at home now with all this notification and all this busyness and something to be preoccupied with. And if we don't, your brain will literally make you find one. And so it's just, we learn this, we didn't grow up with smartphones, and especially our age. So we've learned this, we can certainly unlearn it, but it's gonna take some concerted effort, I think, because it's made to be so addictive.
Right. And, a lot of people like to do a challenge, right? If we were to do a step challenge, you'd be like, yeah, let's do that step challenge, even like a macro challenge. Here's a challenge. Don't
Yeah,
pick up your phone at the stoplight. Don't pick up your phone after 7 p.m. Like, those are the challenges that are going to actually serve you and where we're at right now.
yeah. I think, some changes that I've made in the last month to be better is like do not disturb during my
Mm.
work day so I don't get personal texts because that is very distracting. Um, I love to scroll in bed. Like, it is my dang guiltiest pleasure. And it every day before the last month when I've gotten up, I was like, how in the world did like 30 minutes just get by? Like, I have no idea. It like dissipated. And then I was late, and then I was mean to my kids, and then I was like, oh my God, we have to hurry and rush. And then I was pounding my coffee and getting on calls. That was like literally the whole problem. So now I make myself, and it's still so hard, but I make myself not check emails, not check social media, not check the bank account, not check anything until 8 a.m. when I get to work.
That is an amazing challenge as well.
And it is, I mean, I have to force it.
Oh my God.
But I feel so much better
Yes.
not inviting the entire world into my life in
Mhm.
my bed.
I've been so bad about that, you guys. Confessions. These are my confessions. Because I'll like open up my Aura ring. That's the first thing I do. I grab my phone to make my alarm stop, and then I open up my Aura ring app to see what my sleep and recovery score is. And then where are my finger wanders next?
Stupid finger. It's just, I know, I had like a whole thing of like places that I checked, and then I'd recheck if I really didn't want to get out of bed. It's
Yes.
a whole thing for sure.
Okay, I'm gonna get back to that. I'm gonna get back to that. Not before 8 a.m. Yeah, that's a good rule. That's a good rule to have, you guys. And here's the thing, we're not missing out on anything.
No, and the thing is like with the emails and stuff, like I wasn't responding. It was just weighing on me for those hours.
Oh yeah, and I want you to know, like, even thinking about this, I have this resistance pop up. Like, you don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. It's like an addiction, right? When you want a drink, or
Yeah.
you get addicted to all kinds of things, you guys. Exercise, when I was addicted to exercise and I was trying to not
Mhm.
exercise, there was a pull, and I like had to make it past a certain
Oh
point.
yeah,
And
it's
finally,
hard.
once it got to the end of the day, I was like, I did it. And it sounds crazy, but if you have been in this place, it's like trying not to have a drink.
Hmm. Hmm. It's white knuckling it for a while.
Yes. Until
Yep.
you realize you can do it. It's fine. You didn't miss out on anything. You didn't gain weight. You didn't whatever.
Hmm.
That's the hard stuff. Like, if you
Hmm.
think getting enough protein is hard, girl, this is the work that we need to be doing.
Yeah, I know. And I just think it's like if you can get off the hamster wheel and kind of start thinking about it, like, learning how to protect your peace and truly. Like it's crazy. We invite all these people and whatever anyone's spouting off, you never know what you're going to get when you open up the internet anywhere,
Yeah.
like into your brain, like first thing in the morning. And it just, if you think about, like, I couldn't even remember actually before I had started doing that, unfortunately, because it'd been so many years, but we didn't start our days like that before.
Girl, oh my gosh, I know. So I'm just thinking back, like when I used to teach first thing in the morning. I
Yeah.
wasn't on my phone looking at Instagram. Didn't have Instagram until after Brooks was born. So I would get up. Granted, I wasn't eating enough at the time, so I'd just drive on down to the spin studio, teach my spin class, and get a workout in, be totally present with my class. Life was good.
Yeah, I
I didn't
know.
make any money, but life was good.
Mm, good.
It didn't matter.
Yeah, so I don't know. I just think like everyone, the reason this is hard is because there's not one way. So it's not the cold plunge, it's not the meditation, it's not eating a certain way, it's not the cortisol cocktail. It's not any one thing. You have to like look at it from your own life and figure out where is it coming from for you? What are like, and take the low-hanging fruit out. Like I said, just don't look at your phone. And I still use my phone as an alarm, but I make myself not do the rest of it. And it started off way less than until 8 o'clock. I started off until like after my workout, which is about 7.
Yeah.
Um, and then I just kind of kept pushing it out a little bit, and I'm still working on it and whatever. Some people put their phone on airplane mode.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I like airplane mode.
So you could do that too. But yeah, I think it's just like trying these little things when you're at the stoplight, like that urge comes, like sitting with it and being like, there's no reason I need to check this phone. Someone's calling me, I can hear it. I
So,
saw this really funny meme. Do you remember like in the 2000s when we all paid for ringtones
yeah.
and it's all like blaring all the time? And now we all have our phones on silent. Like the phone doesn't ring anymore ever.
Oh my gosh. Yes, my family was giving me shit because my phone is like always on do not disturb.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's in the middle of the day. And I'm like, I don't want to be disturbed, period.
Yeah. You know what's funny? But we used to like put songs and like thing would like
Yes.
freak out. Yeah.
The fun is
Um,
over. We don't want that. Do not get a hold of us.
can you imagine if that was still happening? Like the thing was singing to you.
Oh my gosh. There would just be noise everywhere all the time.
Oh, God.
Talk
Yeah.
about hyperstimulated. Before we finish up, you mentioned a really great book before we got started. Um,
Yes.
which book was it? The Metabolism one by Laura?
Yeah, so there's 2 of them. So, Healing Your Metabolism by Dr. Laura Briden. She's wonderful and talks a lot about why we have such metabolic issues in this country. So for people who are struggling with weight loss, but more importantly, like have high cholesterol, high blood sugar, high liver enzymes, have visceral belly fat, like are wondering why they can't get rid of those, what to do about those numbers, all of that stuff. She talks a lot about like why a lot of us just want to burn sugar versus burn fat as well, and like that metabolic inflexibility. So that is a great book. And then the second one is called The Way Out by Alan Gordon. He's a psychologist, and it's a lot about chronic pain, but it discusses everything that we talked about today. So
Mm.
even if you don't have chronic pain, you can still insert your perimenopausal symptom there. You can still insert your dizziness or your headache or your anxiety, even. Like it works for all of those things.
Okay. I have one more question for you because I don't understand this.
Yeah.
Can you talk about cholesterol and perimenopause?
Yeah.
Does, just explain that to me because I don't totally understand.
Yeah. So when we lose estrogen at the end of our perimenopause, going into menopause, that can contribute to insulin coming up, blood sugar coming up, which is also contributing to cholesterol coming up.
Okay.
So when we look at metabolic function as a whole or assessing insulin resistance, we also can look at things like triglycerides, LDL cholesterol, which I find this absolutely fascinating lately. Like I would say in the past few years, I mean, I have a demographic of patients who are ahead of the curve for sure. That most of them don't eat the standard American diet. Most of them are lifting and exercising and have some education and some practices in place to protect their health. And I mean, I would say 90% of my patients at least have high LDL
Interesting.
cholesterol. Like
'Cause
it is,
I'll
I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, because I'll have clients like chime in about it. They go to their doctor and then they're concerned about it, and their doctor tells them to like lower their protein or something. And I'm like, I don't think that's the issue.
No, I would say so for high LDL, I recommend fiber. Like
Fiber?
soluble fiber. You have to have soluble fiber. That helps with both blood sugar and cholesterol numbers. Obviously, protein is a big component, which is helpful. Um, Leaner proteins for sure. So not chicken, turkey, fish, uh, leaner red meats are probably fine sometimes, not like ribeyes and like some of the really, really fatty cuts. There's sort of like this thing within like this war almost within like Western medicine. They're like, you have to decrease your saturated fat. Holistic people are like, it's not saturated fat, it's sugar. I think it's both. I don't think it's an all or nothing thing. I think certainly sugar, refined carbohydrates, and ultra processed food contribute to high LDL triglycerides, A1C, blood sugar stuff. But I certainly think that if you do have high LDL, like eating ribeyes and like really fatty cuts of meat isn't going to help either.
Yeah, yeah. And the same thing. I'm like, I don't think my clients are eating all of these crazy things. So I think it's fascinating
Yeah.
how our bodies change in perimenopause. Like it's fascinating how you are impacted by your hormones, and just everyone take everything we said to heart today. Tiny shifts. Maybe 8 o'clock is too late to open Instagram, then open it at 6:30 instead of 6 o'clock a.m. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think like I mean, I tell my patients all the time, like, have your scroll time, but
yeah,
let's like set it for a time and then let's set like a boundary of like when we're gonna stop doing it too. Like, I don't think we need to live under a rock and like, we can certainly use modern technology. That's not a problem. But I do think watching how you feel and like what's happening with it would be good.
so I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but it's worth mentioning again. As you all may know, I recently got a cat. And this cat is the best thing for my algorithm because now I get all these awesome cat videos, and Brooks will send me cat videos. And so now instead of seeing a bunch of triggering coaches and things, that I compare myself to, I got cats, and I
Yeah.
could not be happier.
I know. I love my dog videos. My husband and I send really funny parenting memes back and forth of like just ridiculous things. And that's what my algorithm looks like for the most part.
Oh, I love it. Yes, you guys, we don't need to know what's happening in every corner of the world. Like you said, Ellie, our brains are not evolved to deal with all of that information.
It's funny. So in this book, The Way Out, he talks about, he's like, I went to school with this guy, Brett, and I know what Brett had for brunch. I haven't talked to Brett in 30 years. He's like, but I know what he had for brunch today. And he's like, and you know what? I didn't need to know what Brett had for brunch today. It certainly could have waited. It's just like when you think about it, you're like, wow, that is probably true.
Well, okay, one quick note on this too. Another great book for people is, I can't remember which book I read this in, if it was um fork Essentialism or Deep Work. Anyway, talk about Facebook. And you guys, I used to run my groups on Facebook. It is a great, easy way to connect. But people talk about how Facebook makes their lives easier and it makes connection easier. However, are you really connecting with the people who are truly adding value to your life? Just because you saw Brett's brunch that you went to high school with 35 years ago, do you need to be connected to him? Or do you need to be connected to your friend who actually lives in town, or someone you could actually like go get coffee or lunch with? It's not
Mhm.
a quality connection necessarily. So you have to really be careful.
It actually, in Laura's book on the metabolism, the first like sort of treatment part of that metabolism book is about like getting what you need in terms of living. And the very first thing she recommended or talked about was social connection. And she was like genuine belonging, authentic social connection. And I've read several books who've talked about that. And I do think that social media creates a false sense of social connection for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys. Don't let
Yeah.
this weigh you down. It's hopeful. To
I
me,
think it's so hopeful. Like
yeah.
there's so much to do here and it's not incredibly expensive and time consuming and hard. Like this will free up your life. It's
Yes.
amazing.
It is amazing. And I was telling Allie, I was like, we have to like band together because it is a radical like act of self-care to do these things for yourself. And you have so and so down the way who's not doing it. She's putting new decorations out for every single holiday. She's got her Amazon hauls. Like you got to hang out with the people who are doing this also. You'll
Mhm.
feel more normal because that's not normal. Like what we're doing right now is not normal.
No. Like
Just
find
because
people who don't get mad when you don't respond to their text right away. Like set your boundaries around that. Those are all good things.
oh my gosh, I have to tell you. So it's so funny. My friend Amy, who spoke at the summit, Dr. Amy Osborne, I hope she listens to this one too. She listened to one of our last podcasts and she was like, this one is like therapy for me. You guys, there's nothing easy about running your own business. And I know you all have hard jobs, but so do Allie and I and Dr. Amy. And it's just different. It's different when it's you. And she was saying it's like therapy. And I just got a text from her as you and I were talking. She's like, oh, and it was like a 3-day late text after I sent her a 3-day late text. Like, your friends will get it.
Yes.
You
And
don't
it's
need
like
the
good
drama
for
of
you,
like, why didn't you
honestly.
text me back? Like, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it's good. Like
It's all
it means that you care about yourself, which is great.
oh, Allie, I just love you. You're the best.
I love you too. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll see you soon, Allie.
Bye.
Bye-bye.